Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, the Pennsylvania legislature moves closer to a texting ban and maybe a cell phone ban as well, and then important highway needs. All of that and more on this edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and we'll be back following these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, you see this? This is my BlackBerry. Now, no, this is not about sexting, although we'll have to see if we get there, what should be done in Pennsylvania law. Sitting across from me to talk about texting and cell phone bans is Eugene DePasquale. He's a State House member from York County. Representative, thanks for coming.
Terry, thanks for having me.
All right, now the Senate this past week voted to make texting a primary offense and cell phone use a secondary offense. You were one of the earliest proponents of doing a ban on these. Talk about this. Why do you think this is important for the legislature to pass?
In 2007, it was April of my first term. I introduced the first proposal in Pennsylvania to ban texting while driving. I didn't know what I was getting in the middle of. The public reaction to this. Yeah. I mean, literally, like, people started rolling down their windows. Thanks for fighting for this. I mean, it's something that cuts across not only party lines, it's demographic.
Sure.
Because what happens is, at the end of the day, everyone's been cut off on the road by somebody who's been on their cell phone or texting while driving.
Or weaving in front of
in front of them, causing traffic problems. And so it really, it was one of those things that just every person could relate to. And since that time, we've made enormous progress. Other states have passed it, and I think Pennsylvania is now on the verge of passing a very strong law.
I think 33 states banned texting and 9 banned cell phones. But let's talk about the ingredients of this. There's been a debate in the legislature among your colleagues, both in the House and the Senate, about whether it should be a texting, let's say, and cell phone use should be a primary offense. Explain to our viewers the difference between primary and secondary.
A primary means basically you can be pulled over for the action. A secondary offense means you can get fined for it if you've done something else wrong. So, for example, if you're texting while driving under the Senate bill, you can just, and a police officer sees you texting while driving, they can pull you over. However, if it were a secondary offense, you would have to go through a stop sign, and the officer would also have to notice you.
Like the seatbelt law.
Correct. You cannot get pulled over for not wearing a seatbelt. However, if you're speeding and not wearing a seatbelt, it can get added to your fine.
Now, you don't have to get into detail about this, but what do you think would be the? I know you're also debating the penalties for this.
Correct.
What's the reasonable penalty in?
I think the Senate bill is a reasonable fine. I mean, when you're talking about the first offense, $100. And, I mean, our goal, at least in the House version, and hopefully we're going to make sure that this happens when we get the bill to the governor's desk, is use a significant portion of that fine for especially teen education, to educate them on the dangers, because that's certainly the group that we see the highest number of people texting while driving. Almost 2/3 of teens nationwide have admitted to texting while driving, which is obviously insane.
Yeah. All right, now I want to switch gears a little bit. There is also, I joked about it at the beginning, about sexting and, as you know, of this horrible Anthony Weiner situation. We don't know if he's going to resign. We're not going to go there. That's not our job here on this program. But let me raise this question with you. You've got these young kids, and they're sending these photos around. And obviously, here's my point. You tell me what you think. We want to stop this. Not a good practice. I think we all agree. But we also don't want to ruin some 18 or 17-year-old person's life for being stupid. So is there something there that you think is doable, is workable? So if they send it, we send them a message. Now tell me if I'm right or am I crazy about this?
As someone with an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old, I mean, there's going to be a point, probably faster than my wife and I want it to happen, where they're going to have cell phones and they're going to be
talking about your kids.
Yeah, my kids, So it'll happen probably quicker than we want it to happen, where they're going to be in a position.
Trust me, been there and done it, it will.
This is something that, not that we're ancient by any means, but this was unimaginable when we were 14, 15, and 16-year-olds that this would even be going on. If we were to basically have our lives marred by something stupid we did when we were 14 or 15 or 16-year-olds, I mean, literally, I mean...
But we do have to have some way to stop... Go ahead.
There needs to be a way to teach them a lesson, almost like in a detention in school. You do something stupid in school, you got to lick stamps for 3 hours after school or something like that. But it doesn't stick with you the rest of your life, especially on a first or second offense, something like that. And we need to allow prosecutors the ability to say, okay, this was a kid that just made a stupid mistake, send a stupid message, as opposed to someone that is truly harassing someone.
We're going to run to break and want to come back and want to talk about the state budget, maybe voter ID, things I know you're very familiar with. But you do think there needs to be a process that would allow prosecutors some discretion, you think?
Absolutely. You can't say it's a mandatory. If you send one stupid message, now we're going to put a kid in jail and have it stick. There's a difference, and we know this when you see a type of email or text message. There's a difference between a stupid message and someone who's truly bullying a kid.
Well, I can't believe we're going on to another subject. I didn't get into Anthony Weiner and all of that horrible mess. But when we come back, we got the state budget. I want to also talk about voter ID, and is it a good idea or a bad idea, that and more, after we pay some bills.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by ReconnectPA.org, supporting a comprehensive transportation funding solution, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
We're back with State Rep Eugene DePasquale. As I said before, he's running for Auditor General. I'm letting him get that kick in. We'll have all the candidates on at some time. But you need to see free publicity for your health representative. All right, the budget, $27.3 billion. The House sends over to the Senate. The Senate says, whoa, whoa, put brakes on. We want to spend some of the surplus. We want to restore some of the cuts. These are Republicans saying back to Republicans. Republicans control the Senate. They say the Republicans control the House. We're going to restore a little bit. What do you think about that?
I think the state Senate Republicans are, I believe their priorities are right, and that is this is money that's actually in the state coffers. It's not projected revenue. I think it's appropriate to put some of the money aside in the rainy day fund, say $150 million. But the hospital cuts and the education cuts, we should use, again, the rest of that money that's, again, in the state coffers to restore those cuts. If you cut education, you're either going to cut key programs for kids at the local level. You take art and music in York City. Those kids need those programs. That is not fluff. Or you're going to cause massive property tax increases. And on the hospital, look, those are critical services, you know, emergency room care, uncompensated care. Someone shows up in the emergency room without insurance. Those hospitals, you don't want them to have to shut down because they're eating that cost.
All right. Do you think this budget's going to get done on time?
I do think it'll get. I think
third week in June, people keep talking about. Does that sound reasonable? Time frame?
I think it sounds reasonable. I mean, my instinct is on this. You know, because the Republicans control everything, they know it'll be an enormous embarrassment.
Well,
they don't get
as
it
I've
done
said, yeah, I've said this many times. I mean, you know what will happen with the media in this state on July 1? It'll be day one.
Right.
July, it'll be, and it'll start that count. And I don't think anybody wants. Plus, I think it's time to get it. You know, you've certainly had plenty of time. I think you would agree, right?
Right. There's no question.
You've had much. All right. I want to talk to something, and go to something fairly controversial, something I know that does split often along party lines, and that's voter ID. To what extent there should be, that you should have to show proof of some kind. We can debate about what that proof is when you go and vote. Proof of residency in the state. It's a bill that, you know, that maybe has a chance of passage. I don't know. You maybe know better than I do on this. First of all, do you generally support these voter ID bills?
The bill that is currently before the legislature, I strongly oppose. Let me first of all start off with, right now, when you vote for the first time in any precinct,
that's right. You have to show ID.
You have to show ID.
Correct.
And every time you vote in that precinct, you have to sign your name, and those are the judge of elections. You have a Republican and a Democrat, minority and majority inspector there. So there is already a check to make sure that you are there. What this bill would make you do is every time you show up to vote at that precinct, you would have to show the same ID. You would have to show some form of ID. And I just think at the end of the day, what this would do is for people on the lower end of the income scale, you know, college students.
I was going to say, you know, as a professor, I hear some concerns expressed by college students that the residency might be an issue. As you know, under federal law, and under federal law now, students are permitted to vote in where they temporarily reside. Now, that creates some consternation in college towns.
That's exactly right. But here's the thing. If you look at voter turnout models, or voter turnout in general, in Pennsylvania or even nationally, I don't think our concern is that too many people are voting. I think our concern is we don't have enough eligible voters that are voting. So I think we should be trying to empower more people to vote, not trying to limit people to vote. And this idea that somebody, I mean, we had this, somebody testified this in a judiciary, that there was a bus in New York with illegal immigrants that traveled all over the country, voting in precincts in York and Pittsburgh and in Cleveland and Columbus, and that's how Obama won the election. I mean, I think it's just absurd.
Yeah. I mean, we can make a lot of art. I mean, there's no doubt who won the president. This is not 2000.
Right. That's exactly right.
There's no doubt about it. He won our state by 10 points. He won by 7. You know, overwhelming. Look, thanks for coming in. I really appreciate it. All right, we got important highway needs. We have the Secretary of the Pennsylvania Department of Highways and our friend Bob Latham from the Associated Pennsylvania Constructors going to come in here and help us solve the transportation highway needs of the state after we pay some bills. Talking about bills, we'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, we're going to return to a familiar theme. There's important highway needs, some $3.5 billion funding gap, 7,000 miles of roads that just can't be refurbished. They need to be rebuilt, reconstructed. 25% of the bridge. Joining me, as often is the case, is Bob Latham. He's the Executive VP of the Associated Pennsylvania Constructors and the Secretary of the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. Do I got that right, Barry?
Long title, but you got it
Barry. Right. Hey, Mr. Secretary, thanks for coming on the program. All right, look, you all are both members of the Highway, this commission established by Governor Corbett. Is there any hope that you guys can give our viewers, that we can do something about a permanent source of funding for the roads and bridges in this state? I'll start with you, Mr. Secretary.
Absolutely, Terry. I hope that everybody watching this believes that this commission was set up to find a solution. It's not to study the problem.
I got it.
It's to come up with a solution with recurring revenue, meaning revenue we can count on to solve this problem that we all need addressed.
All right. Now, there's not a lot of appetite in this recession for new taxes. We've tried tolling. You and I have talked about this before. We'll toll Route 80. We'll sell the turnpike. We'll lease the turnpike. What are some of the possible options that are out there?
Terry, I think there is an appetite for improvement and safety and convenience for people to get around. We've done a number of efforts on public polling with a very reliable polling service that shows
mainly
that
me is what you're talking about. Full disclosure.
Full disclosure. But the point is that people understand that a core function of government is having a good, sound, safe transportation system. But if you look at Pennsylvania compared to other states, I mean, it's been a long time since we've addressed some of the inequities in our licensing systems and in our registration systems. We've got SUVs that are paying less than light-duty trucks, the same as cars. I mean, we're looking at a myriad of different options there. But you know, the bottom line is you don't get these things for free. There is going to have to be some sort of fee increases and that sort of thing.
Mr. Secretary, what's the process? To tell our viewers, I mean, we're not so much into process. I mean, I think our viewers care about, let's get the problem fixed. I mean, I think you would agree, right?
Absolutely.
But what is the process here that this commission is going to go through?
Well, I think for the public that's watching this, it's important that, I don't care if the three of us started a company and went to a bank and said we wanted more money, or for a board of directors raising funding. What are you going to get for it? Well, as Bob said, the public's interested in safety. I mean, their kids ride the school buses on the roads, their family goes to and from work, their groceries get delivered to the store on it, their products go from farm to market on it. So the system's necessary and we need improvement. What we're going to do is we're going to come up with a menu of choices of what we think can raise the funding necessary to improve our roads to a good standard of care for safety and trip reliability. Then we're going to show you how we're going to modernize our approach, meaning what we're going to do to make sure every dollar we get is used effectively. And the third leg of that is we are going to show people what you would get with this investment, what's going to be different about the Commonwealth, project by project, over a next 10-year period. And we'll compare what would happen if we made the investment to what would happen if you did nothing. Because I think to anybody watching this...
And then your proposals would have to go to the General Assembly for
Absolutely.
Is there anything that either one of you... There's pretty much nothing that any governor, whether it had been Governor Rendell or Governor Corbett, can do on their own without legislative action, right? There's not much.
There's not an edict they're going to say that.
So they can't just.
The Commission is going to be coming up with recommendations that will ultimately have to be approved by the General Assembly.
And when are you? Is there a specific date that you must report? Or
August 1st is our deadline the governor gave us.
Oh well, then we're going to have you guys are going to have to come back here. We're going to have to get this report in some detail. Bob, over the years, you and I have talked about. I mean, am I exaggerating the problem? I mean, I only know I get on the roads and what I see I don't like. And I heard the Republican, the chairman of the Republican chairman of the Transportation Committee of the House actually say he is now concerned about safety on the bridges.
This is in the State House?
Yes, in the State House. I mean, either of you.
Well, PennDOT does a wonderful job of inspecting our bridges and making sure that they're safe. So I want to reiterate.
I'm not trying to scare people.
I understand,
but
what I will tell you is I think we are, and I might defer to the Secretary on this. I think we are reaching a point where, in some cases, we're going to have to start posting or reducing the allowable weight on a lot of bridges, and in some cases, when the inspectors say this bridge is getting critical, they're going to have to be closed. We weren't at that point before, but as much good work as PennDOT has done over the last several years in fixing the deficient bridges, more come online every year.
Look, the problem isn't this isn't the PennDOT. I mean, PennDOT maybe have the responsibility, but these are bridges that were built 40 and 50 years ago that have gotten traffic that they were not built to handle and weights. Am I nuts about? Am I crazy?
Maybe about certain things, but not this topic.
Okay, good. I'll let you get by with that one.
I think the issue, as Bob said, is we own 25,000 bridges, and a lot of them were built even more than 50 years ago. And as Bob, we've been posting them. And the reason I said we're going to give a decade of investment of what you would get if we raised the fees, we're also could compare it to what if we don't raise the fees? What if we do nothing? And what you're going to see is in the second half of that decade, you're going to see that we're going to have to start closing a lot of bridges. It goes beyond posting them. It's just we won't have enough money to maintain them.
All right, when we come back, this is not popular, and maybe they're going to tell me they're not going to recommend it. A gasoline tax. I mean, we use gas. That's on the roads. I'll ask the Secretary and Bob Latham about gas tax. Is it on the table when we return?
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
All right, I promised it used to be the $64,000 question. I don't know what number, a dollar sign I'm going to attach to it. I'm going to ask, but is it $3.5 billion that we need to do this? Gasoline tax, not very popular. What is it off the table completely?
Off the table. We're not going to increase the flat gasoline tax, and may not be for the reasons you think. Everybody talks about the price of gas, but the reality is we have energy policies and objectives that are getting us to consume less gasoline. All the way back to the Carter administration, we started what are called CAFE standards, which means we're increasing the fleet efficiency.
Right.
We're mandated to increase our fleet mileage by 40 miles per gallon by the year 2016. That means if you drive 15,000 miles a year, back in 1982, you probably consumed 1,000 gallons of gas because you got 15 miles a gallon. By 2016, you're going to be getting 30 miles a gallon. That's 500 gallons of gas. It doesn't make sense to make your primary revenue source a source you know is going to deplete as you follow energy.
It's going to decrease,
That's one of the biggest things Governor Corbett is asking us to do, which I think it's high time the country faces. We've got to marry our transportation revenue sources to our energy.
So you're telling me I just can't say it's unpopular, that's why you're not doing it. There's a real rationale for it, right?
You have to marry energy policies with transportation.
I got it.
We're going to do that.
All right, when this is all said and done, How optimistic are you? I mean, how optimistic are you that we're going to get something done here?
I'm very optimistic, and I'll tell you why. I think that we've been talking about this for quite some time. There's a lot of support out there. We've seen support in the public. We've seen support in the media for this. We're going through a painful, somewhat general fund budget situation now. It has to be done. But when the report comes out, I think you're going to have it laid out in terms of how we're going to modernize our system. We're going to make changes that are going to be more efficient. Things are going to be different. It's not going to be business as usual. And the Secretary and the Commission will lay that out for folks, along with the 10 years of investment. And this is a program that will stimulate the economy, and I think the elected officials will see that, and I think we'll get it done in the fall.
You know,
it's time to invest.
Yeah. One of the points that I've made over the years, and it may seem fairly obvious, is that if we want investment, we want companies to come into the state, we want to create jobs, how can we do it with a crumbling infrastructure? I don't get why that wouldn't be an essential element for both parties. Forget whether you're liberal or conservative on this.
It's for the future of the Commonwealth. I mean, we retain businesses and we attract businesses based on a lot of factors, and one of them is the transportation system. How long is it going to take their employees to get to work? How difficult is it to get their products in and out of the state? It's a key factor.
And
every business that comes to us
I've seen surveys by the National Office Park administrators, and they look at, they do look at tax structure and liability, but right there is what is the availability and access to transportation facilities, what kind of shape is the interstate system in, what kind of rail do you have. That's a very, very key factor, and if we let that go, that's going to have a detrimental impact. But if we invest in it, conversely, we'll attract more business and jobs.
Can we put a stake in a couple of ideas here on this program, once and for all? Tolling Route 80, is it dead, gone, forgotten?
Specifically, tolling one interstate is dead. All right, but the idea of tolling is still a mechanism that, again, if you look at the energy objectives, tolling is a mileage-based collection system.
Right.
And that means it doesn't matter whether your car is electric, gas, hydrogen, fuel cell, you get charged the same. So tolling as a general strategy is still on the table. Tolling,
it could be regional tolling,
it could be just a broader statewide system as a future. But picking one interstate and saying, this is a strategy, that's off.
So it could be regional as well. You set up a bunch of regions and toll within the regions. Is that?
That's possible. I can't predict where we're going to end up next month. We'll be, like you said, you can have us back on the program to see where we end up.
Well, you're coming back. That's a must. All right, we got about 30 seconds. Sail the turnpike, lease the turnpike. That stake in those, right?
Stake in it.
Yeah, I think the markets for those came and went, and I just don't think that that's a viable alternative.
All right, so we did something anyway. We're looking forward, but we also are moving the past behind us on some of these old ideas. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. Always, you stay well.